welcome to another expert interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine and Pipeliner CRM here in the US. And today I'm joined by Ian Mills, who is in Newbury in the UK. And Ian is one of the authors of a new book that is out this month, September 2017, The Salesperson Secret Code. So welcome, Ian.
Yeah, thank you very much, and pleasure to be with you. And I'd probably rather be in San Diego than Newbury in the UK right now, partly because you've probably got sunshine and we don't. So anyway,
yeah, we do
good
actually. It's a very pleasant time of year here, I have to say. And being from Ireland originally, myself, in the same part of the world as Ian, I can commiserate with you.
Okay, thank you.
So the Salesperson Secret Code, what's all that about?
Well, look, just a little bit of background, bit of history. I've been selling for about 38 years now. I started when I was about 17 years of age. I've worked for some big multinational companies. I've run for the last 20 years a company called Transform Performance International. And in that work, I've advised many global organizations on how they can improve their performance. And, put simply, that means how can they up their game selling wise. I was about to say I've been there, seen it, and got the T-shirt. But one of the things that I find is that I learn things every day, every week, every month, every year. And the piece that I'm most fascinated with is really around the mindset, so the attitudes and the belief systems that cause high performers to be high performers. I've done a lot of work in that area. I've also done a lot of work with entrepreneurs and successful business people generally. And I think it's fair to say that virtually anyone who's successful as a leader or an entrepreneur, their greatest talent is their ability and their willingness and desire to sell. So that just a little bit of background for you. These things emerge quite often when you have quiet moments. And I was part of a group called the Entrepreneurs Exchange in London, and I used to get on the train back home at night and think about the presenters and the stories that I heard, and actually there was no real commercial value, but what I noticed is that the entrepreneurs were quite different to many corporate people that I'd connected with. So I started to do a little bit of research, and it soon became evident that I was onto a really good theme. And most of our work, given the fact that it is in the world of sales, I thought, well, hold on a minute. What is it that makes the top 5 or 10% of salespeople distinctive? And the rule book doesn't always suggest this, but I always start with the end in mind. So on that train journey, I thought, the Salesperson Secret Code. Right. So what is it that goes on internally? What are the beliefs that they hold, the attitudes that they have, the values by which they operate? So I did some research. There are very few books, in my opinion, that cover that topic. There are many sales books that share skills, ideas, tips, processes, tools, methods, and I wouldn't knock at any of that. Sure. It all has a place, and I'm an avid reader of many of those publications, but I couldn't find anything that was about the deep-rooted beliefs. So that's what got the journey going. So we kicked it off 3 years ago, and it's culminated in the completion of the academic research and the writing of the storyboard.
So one thing I was really drawn to about this was because of obviously my background working with Huthwaite, spin selling, Neil Rackham, one of the original people doing sales research, was the fact that your book is research based. So can you tell us a little bit about how you conducted that research and how that research-based approach kind of differentiates this book?
Okay, so if I were writing this on my own, I'm one of the co-authors. Frankly, I would write it from my personal experience. But what I found is that in order to get greater gravitas, greater credibility, you need to conduct professional research. So I engaged in particular with a man called Dr. Ben Laker. Ben Laker is an academic. Ben Laker 3 years ago brought to the table a professional approach to the research that we needed to undertake before we wrote the book. And actually, that was a learning curve for me, because I felt, research is about you have an opinion, let's prove it. Ben's view is absolutely you do not do that. You start with a blank piece of paper.
Right.
So there was already some data in the marketplace, but the core of our work was to approach multiple organizations in different geographies, in different sectors, and ask them to give us salespeople who were top performers and bottom performers. Now, we wouldn't articulate that to the individuals,
Sure.
but typically, for obvious reasons, typically those organizations gave us something like 10 top performers and 10 bottom performers. What we then did is we then interviewed each of those people for approximately an hour and a half. So it was quite a deep, scientific, structured interview that we went through. What we also did is we got all of those individuals to complete an online survey. So many of the people that you are connected with will be familiar with some of the psychometric instruments. So we used a couple that did a deep dive on their behavioral preferences, their attitudes, their mindsets, their motivation. And what that meant is that we built a library of to all intents and purposes, millions of data points, and we had an ability to undertake a comparative analysis. And it was that comparative data that enabled us to sort of almost unpack the difference.
Right.
And it's a scary thing for somebody like me, because I've been selling for so long. I kind of think sometimes I know the answer. But the academic approach meant I have to wait. And there were moments where I thought, actually, it's not telling us what we might want to hear, but you can't change the truth. But I've got to say, what's culminated in the book is a great read, and I think will be, for some a revelation, and for some an anchor to effect change.
So tell me a little bit about destination beliefs. That's a kind of fundamental starting point, right? So what are destination beliefs when it comes to salespeople?
Okay, so look, in any book you can't articulate everything. So what we try to do is we try to distill the findings into 5 of the most common destination belief areas. So they're not going to surprise you. They are things such as communication, influence, resilience, control, fulfillment. And what we found from the research is that every salesperson that we connected with had strengths in each of those areas. So that then becomes the worrying moment, because you think, well, okay, we haven't got anything here that reveals a secret, or reveals the sort of Mars bar recipe or the Coca-Cola recipe. But what we did find, and this is the point of value, is that beneath each of those areas were sub-beliefs, or what we call motivators, and each of those 5 areas had 2 of them. And the 2 of them, if you think about it a little bit like this, the 2 of them that contributed to each destination belief were a blend. And what distinguished the top performers from the rest was the unique blend. So what I mean by that is the level of intensity that they hold one versus the other. So everybody held both, but the top performers had a greater level of intensity in areas that you might not imagine versus the rest of the performers. So I suppose if you were to kind of try and net that, it's a little bit like, we could all make Coca-Cola because we all know what the ingredients are, but we probably won't be able to get it to taste quite the same.
Right.
Yeah. So the issue is, where do you focus as a salesperson if you want to replicate the best of the best? And then I think as a sales leader, what is it you look for if you're trying to recruit somebody that, when you've onboarded them, you don't get deeply disappointed with what the outcome is? Yeah, and we've all been there and seen that one.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So how do you then? I mean, everybody when you hire a salesperson, like everybody is looking for somebody who's motivated, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how then do you uncover whether those motivations are strong enough, whether they're the right motivations? Because obviously, what you call journey motivations are a key part of all this equation. But you wouldn't hire a salesperson who wasn't motivated. But obviously, there's a deeper level of motivation, right?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. So what our experience suggests is that it's massively difficult to distinguish people when you're interviewing them. If you're working for, I don't know, American Express or Coca-Cola, and you've got a panel of people that you're interviewing, they're all going to be smart, they're all going to have experience, they're all going to have talent, and they're probably quite good at pitching at the interview. Right. The issue comes 3-6 months down the road, and you notice that one salesperson is underperforming and another is overperforming, but on the face of it, they look the same. So what our research uncovers is more about what's going deep inside, and therefore, in order to become better or more effective or efficient at recruiting, you've got to get to the nub of what the truth is or what the reality is. You've got to get beyond the, I suppose, the sales pitch to get the job. Which is kind of ironic in a way, because if they're good at selling to you, one would imagine they might be good at selling to others. So a couple of things, and I'll give you a couple of examples. Yeah. But one of the things that we've done with the book is that we've already built a psychometric instrument. And the purpose of the psychometric instrument is to help organizations become more effective at the way in which they recruit. And of course, it's not the silver bullet, but it's part of the recruitment equation. Mm-hmm. We've developed the psychometric to help people change an existing sales organization. So kind of identify where the gaps are and what they might want to focus on. So we've put quite a bit of effort into providing support tools that are based on the research. But I'll give you a couple of examples. Mm-hmm. So if I take a destination belief such as fulfillment, right. And as I said, most salespeople hold that. So it's almost, I'm most successful, or I am most fulfilled when I am successful. So the contributing motivations are, at one end, I must win because I fear failure. And at the other end, I want to be better than I ever imagined I could be.
Right.
So they're not mutually exclusive. All salespeople have all of them. But what we found is the top 5% of salespeople have a much greater level of intensity around, I want to be better than I ever imagined I could be, as opposed to be driven by failure. Mm-hmm. So they have a bit of that. So a classic trap that leaders fall into is recruiting too heavily on people who are driven by fear. Mm-hmm. And actually, it's limiting. It's limiting at both ends of the spectrum. If they have too much fear of failure, that will drive them to do the wrong things.
Sure.
If they have too little fear of failure, they won't get out of bed in the morning. So you want a little bit of that. But what you really want is you want salespeople who have an ambition to exceed what they ever imagined they could exceed. So we call those two things fear and desire.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get the optimum mix, and I'll give you one other example, and I know you'll get this, but if you take a look at control, the two motivators that can contribute to it, we simply use the label the victim or the hero. So the victim, quite almost obviously, is the salesperson who's got a reason for not selling.
Mm-hmm.
So the market's not quite right. The economy's all over the floor. The pricing's not right. The competition are too stiff. Our pricing model's not good enough. We didn't buy the right CRM system. Mm-hmm. So they've always got a reason for why they've not done what they should do. Whereas what we found is, again, the top 5% of performers in the world of selling take far greater accountability and ownership. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what's going on in the external environment. Okay, now they do hold a little bit of victim, but if you look at the blend of the mix, the optimum mix is something like 22% of victim behavior and 78% of hero type behavior. And I hear time and time again sales leaders talking about the attitude of their salespeople and their lack of ownership and accountability. And it's a deep-rooted thing, but it's not the answer in isolation.
Sure.
What we find is that you've got to get the optimum blend against the 5 destination beliefs, and that will begin to set those individuals apart.
Yeah, it makes complete sense to me, and I mean it's a fascinating subject, especially because it's that whole thing, as you say, of the right combination and mix. Because if you were just like 100% one way or the other, you're not going to be able to operate. So that's fascinating, because I do think that, I mean, organizations invest a lot of time in sales training, and they bring in a motivational speaker for their sales kickoff meeting and all of that stuff. But they really don't, in my experience anyway, invest a lot of time in thinking about mindset and motivation.
I'm with you big time, and if you can think about it and align it to data and science, then you've got a really powerful, a powerful combination, and that's really what we're trying to do. Over the years, I've found, a lot of clients will buy the argument, but where's the evidence? How do you substantiate this? It's far easier to by a system, by a process. And as I said earlier, I think all of that is essential, but it's not the answer. And mindset alone is not the answer. It's got to go hand in glove with everything else. And you will have seen this far more often than I do, but implementation of CRM systems, one of the biggest frustrations of leaders is, why do salespeople not adopt it? Mm-hmm. Well, it's a mindset issue. They've all bought the logic of the system. They've all put their hand in the air to say that they're going to play, but they've got some kind of a belief that it's not worth doing.
Exactly.
So actually, I think in order to get people to embrace best practice, technology, learn from others, open their eyes and minds to the future rather than the past, you've got to attack the belief system. That's really where we come from. One of the other interesting findings is around resilience. And again, if I just net it a little bit, the two contributing beliefs are work harder and work smarter. So we've all seen the sales leaders who focused on, you've got to work harder. Well, actually, sometimes that's fool's gold, because you'll grind yourself into an early grave and achieve little more.
Right.
So So we found the top performers have a greater level of intensity around how am I going to work smarter, which might be creativity, it might be learning, it might be sharing, it might be taking a risk. It's a whole series of things. If they hold the belief that I've got to become smarter and more effective and more efficient, and yes, work harder as well, but got to get the balance of intensity just right in order to optimize what you achieve. And I think sport is a brilliant metaphor for that.
Right.
If you look at any sporting team, you've got to work hard, but if you work 10% harder, it will probably get you nowhere. You've got to work smarter. You've got to be more creative. You've got to play the game in a different way. Oh, and if you combine that with working hard, you're more likely to get what you want to get.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's I think that's a great point. Just coming out of this interview is the fact that too often we try to address one issue, right? As you say, we say let's redouble our our efforts here. Let's like up our activity levels by 400,000% and see what happens, as opposed to saying, let's tweak something here, tweak something here, tweak something here, and look at how all those different pieces contribute. Okay, in the last couple of moments here, let me ask you just two questions. One is, what is the biggest surprise you think people will get from this book? And then second, do you want to give us a little bit more information about yourself and your organization, how people can find out more about you?
So I think firstly, the biggest surprise will be the fact that it's based on research. Again, we all know in the world of selling, very little is based on research. Okay, yes, there's a couple of good examples, but what I see out there in the marketplace is I see the world becoming what I call more VUCA. So I mean, it's an acronym, sorry for acronyms, but more volatile, more uncertain, more complex, and more ambiguous. So if you're going to become a better leader or better salesperson, you've got to get with the program and you've got to become able and capable to operate in that world. So I think what we're giving readers is a science and a logic that will hopefully inspire them and give them ideas on how they might leverage their own success and their organization's success in that context. Oh, I should tell you one other thing. One of the things that we did in the book, so of course it's based on research, but we wanted to make the story more readable, because some salespeople, in the spirit of openness, aren't too into research and data. So how do you enrich it? So what we did is that we found 10 of the most iconic salespeople in the world, some of whom are in very senior leadership positions, and we interviewed them to use them as examples to underpin the academic findings. So frankly, anyone who will read it will not only find the data, I think, intriguing and difference making, but they'll find the examples of these iconic salespeople are really inspirational and enriching.
Excellent. No, I'm looking forward to reading the book myself. It'll also be available in our bookstore on SalesPOP, which
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. Ian, this has been great. I mean, we could go on for hours, and I'm sure once I've read the book, I'll probably want to come back and interview a second time. But in the meantime, could you just share with the audience a little bit more about yourself, about your organization, and how they can find out more and contact you?
Okay, I could go on forever on that one. I've already said I've been selling for 38 years. So, background, actually originally with an American-owned company called Mars, as in Mars bars, the confectionery product. I then sold in the technology sector, and then I worked in the banking sector. I kind of hit lucky as a young man. I managed a large network of banking branches. The only reason is that the CEO liked me because I was a sales professional, not a banker. So, I set up my own business 20 years ago. And actually, we originally were branded Transform People International. So most of our work was working with salespeople, leaders, people who wanted to behave differently, people who wanted to perform differently. And we repositioned our branding a couple of years ago to transform performance international, because we know that's what clients want to do. They want to transform performance. So it's broadened our ability to say, hey, that's people, that's process, that's technology, frankly, whatever you need to pull in order to get to where you want to get to. So I'm lucky enough to have worked for people like HP, Cisco, HSBC, American Express, lots of iconic brands over the years. So really proud to have done that work. So how can people access me? Easiest way is LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search on Ian Mills and Transform Performance. My email address is ian.mills@transformperformance.com. I'm sure sales professionals can find me. I am very easy to track down. I'm very open to connecting and collaborating. Just very briefly in terms of what we bring to the table. We've have a rich history of working with sales organizations around sales transformation. We have a lot of our own tools and methods and ideas. We also work with best-in-class professionals. So it isn't all about us. We're very mindful of trying to understand what clients need to do rather than what we have in our kit bag. We've facilitated some massively successful global programs. I mentioned a little bit earlier, we've just developed a psychometric instrument for the Salesperson Secret Code. We have a conference presentation. We have some workshop deliverables. But at the end of the day, we like to be customer centric. So, frankly, if anyone wants a conversation, let's have a conversation and see where it takes us.
Yeah, listen, that's fantastic. And again, thanks to Ian for joining us today. This has been a fascinating conversation. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine and Pipeliner CRM. This was another expert interview, and I look forward to seeing you soon for another one. Again, thanks, Ian.
Thanks, John.